And now, from North Platte High School Studio B, welcome to Bulldog Banter, where we explore the endless possibilities that education brings. This episode brought to you by NPHS Foundation and the Flower Market.
This is Molly.
This is Will.
And this is a Bulldog Banter.
We talk about stuff, talk to people about stuff, and give you the latest banter Bulldog style.
Today our guest is Brandon Kelliher. He's a North Platte High School alumni, a CIO at Great Plains Health, and the mayor of North Platte.
So, are we supposed to call you like Mr. Mayor or
You can probably call me Brandon. That's just
Brandon?
fine.
Okay.
Brandon?
Sounds good.
Whatever makes you happy.
Awesome.
Okay.
So you're CIO. How is that? Like, what even is?
What is a CIO?
Yeah.
CIO it stands for Chief Information Officer. Or I jokingly call myself the head nerd of the hospital. So I'm in charge of all the technology. I have a staff of not quite 30 people at the hospital that really ultimately they take care of the technology. I do most of the planning and the budgeting and things like that.
All the important stuff.
Yeah.
No, I think making everything work is the important stuff. It's the people that work for me, the ones that really make everything move and make everything happen. They're very intelligent, very fast, and they work really hard. So they're great people in general.
Awesome.
Nice.
So, like, what? I don't know how to ask this. Like, as a CIO, like, what's your like biggest thing you have to overcome on a
What's
daily
the biggest
basis?
challenge?
Yeah, like on a daily basis or like average.
Anybody in the technology world right now, one of their main focuses is cybersecurity. You guys are probably aware schools, hospitals, governments, everything is being attacked by people all across the world trying to get into our data to create ransomware or execute ransomware, steal data, something like that. So we spend a huge amount of time dealing with cybersecurity issues that 20 years ago when I started in IT, we didn't really have to deal with that very much. Now it's a constant job now.
Okay.
Does that get stressful?
Extremely at times.
Yeah.
Once in a while, we spend quite a bit of time tracking down when something odd happens on somebody's computer or somebody opens an email they shouldn't open. We sort of stop what we're doing, address that, make sure that the organization and the data is safe, which sometimes takes 15 minutes and sometimes takes 4 hours. And it doesn't matter whether that is at 2 o'clock in the morning or at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You have to do the same thing.
Yeah. So, like, being a mayor and the CIO, like, going in between of the like both of those, is that pretty stressful, or is that gotten better over the last couple of years? Or
Well, this is the end of going into my fourth year being the mayor. And in the beginning, I would say it did have its pretty stressful moments. Now it's just sort of what I do. I'm kind of used to it. And occasionally there's a day where there's a lot going on at City Hall and there's a lot going on at the hospital. And that can get pretty stressful. But on those days, I usually know when they're coming. So I try to start early and just plan that I'm going to be out late doing things. And you just try to fit everything in on the day and make sure you call everybody back and answer all the emails before you go to bed. That's just what you have to do.
So how's being the mayor? Do you enjoy it? Is it kind of hard to like balance the two then, or?
Most of the time, it's not hard to balance the two. What I enjoy about being the mayor is working with people and help and seeing things happen in the community. That's the fun part of being the mayor or being on city council or really any elected office or appointed position. Those are the fun things. Of course, like any job, being the mayor has its upsides and its downsides.
Yeah.
And also have to deal with people who are upset about things once in a while. And there's nothing wrong with that. Most of the time, they have a good reason to be upset. And you just have to sort of keep in the back of your head that they're really not upset with me. Or at least very rarely are they upset with me. They're just upset with the set of circumstances they're in. And sometimes they've gotten themselves in those circumstances. And sometimes something just happened. It was just unfortunate. And so what I try to do is try to work with them to try to get them into the best place they can be and try to find people who can help them when we can. And sometimes, unfortunately, there's really nothing we can do. But most of the time, we're able to help people through their difficulties.
so, like, adding on to that, like, as a mayor, like, what's your like job? Like, what do you do as a mayor?
Well, you can read the city statutes if you are having trouble sleeping some night. If you go out and read them, and it'll step through kind of what the power is. I'm just kidding. I shouldn't say things like that. But it is not exciting stuff to read, but it is important. And the mayor has certain powers, but probably the way to think about it is I'm sort of like the CEO of the city in that role. I'm in charge of initiating and making things happen. Now, again, like my other job, do I do all the work? Definitely not. The city has a city administrator, head of accounting, head of planning, and all sorts of positions, fire chief, police chief, et cetera. They're the folks that are out there doing the daily work every day, making things happen in the city. I'm more in charge of sort of guiding the ship. I also have to manage the political process, which is running the city council meetings. And probably the most important and most significant power of the mayor, other than just being a good ambassador for your community, is the fact that I decide what goes on the city agenda for the council meetings and what doesn't. And when you think about it, that's kind of a powerful thing to do. I mean, I don't exercise a lot of power around it. Generally speaking, if someone wants to put something on the agenda, I'll put it on there as long as it's relevant. However, if there's something that comes along that I don't think is necessary or I don't want to see it happen, I can just leave it off the agenda. Now, the city council does have a way to override me and put it on the agenda, but I don't think that happens very often in city councils anywhere, because the city council and the mayor, we all try to work together. We all try to make things happen. And when a constituent, someone that lives in North Platte or the area, wants to see something happen, they'll come and talk to us about it. And most of the time, we can figure out a way to do it.
Okay.
Uh-oh, she dropped her notes. So what do you guys like about living in North Platte? I'm going to flip the script and ask you questions.
All right. Well, I honestly enjoy everything that's came the last few years. It's good to see North Platte grow, because when I moved here, it was kind of like dying, I'd say. So it's good to see all of that. And, yeah, I just feel like it's grown a lot.
That's cool.
Yeah, seeing North Platte grow and like how many opportunities has opened up for like everybody is like, that's really big.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had
Yeah.
that a lot in however many years until last couple.
Yeah.
So
Do you know we're actually reaching a point where probably in the next year or two we're going to have a shortage of attorneys in our town?
Really?
why is that?
Well, because many of them have been here for a long time and they're
Oh.
retiring,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they're having trouble getting people to come here and buy their practices and work.
Oh, shoot.
And
So,
so
that
I'm
makes
hopefully,
sense.
hopefully we'll be able to attract some
Yeah.
some folks, people who grew up here, maybe go out and become a lawyer and move back to town. There's a lot of opportunity around that. So if you're interested in the law, think about it. Because a lot of the folks that practiced here for 20, 30, 40 years are now in the process of retiring, and there isn't anyone to replace them.
Yeah.
So what do you guys want to do when you're done with school? Where are you going to go?
That is a great
Yeah,
question.
I haven't really thought a whole lot on that. I would like to keep doing something like this with like cameras and
Yes.
like a videographer or something like that.
Yeah.
I agree.
That'd be fun.
I'm set on, like, I don't know, something around this, more like maybe interviewing or just like a type of like sports or media marketing. That's pretty fun.
Well, that's good. There's a lot of demand for that.
Mhm.
And there's
Yeah.
a lot of
Especially
people
now.
who can. Yeah.
Yes, all the options have opened up recently
Mhm.
for
That's
that.
When I was a senior in high school, I was the editor of the Bulldogger.
Oh, really?
Oh, did you like
So,
it?
No, it was fun. I mean, I'm not a fantastic writer, but I enjoyed writing editorials.
Yeah.
And we had some interesting things happen in school, as you have happen every year when you're in
Right.
school. Of course, that was the old high school, not the one we're sitting in
Yeah.
right now. But Mrs. Blackledge was the person who managed the paper at that time. She was a teacher. Her husband was a longtime editor of the North Platte Telegraph, and she taught journalism, ran the yearbook, and also ran the Bulldogger. So I spent a lot of time sitting there and writing and helping to put the paper together. And of course, it was a team effort. There's a whole class that does it, probably just like they do it now.
Yeah.
So, expanding on that, like, how was your time in North Platte like as a high schooler?
Yeah.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was a great fun to be in high school. I had a great time. Of course, when I was in high school, this was a 3-year school. So you got here when you were a sophomore.
Really?
Yes. And,
Didn't know that.
Yeah, the year. So I graduated in 1987. In 1988, it became a 4-year school. They moved the freshmen. I believe it was 88. Yeah, 88 or 89. One or the other. One year or the other, they moved the freshmen up here. So at that time, we had senior high, which was sophomore up, And then we had junior highs, Madison and Adams, which were 7th through 9th. And then, of course,
Wow.
grade schools were kindergarten through 6th. So that's
I
what
didn't
schooling
know
was.
I didn't
about
either.
that.
But yeah, it was great fun. And I grew up not very far from high school, so I could walk to school every day.
Oh yeah.
So that was kind of handy. But I eventually had a car because, you know, if you want to get a girlfriend, you needed a car.
Yeah.
So I had to get a car. So anyway, it was a lot of fun in high school. We did a lot of things. And it's interesting, not that things were perfect back then, but you know, we didn't have social media. The cell phones didn't exist. You know, it was a different time to be a
Yeah.
teenager
Yeah.
in the world. And I would say generally it was a lot simpler probably to be a teenager than it is now.
So, is it like weird seeing North Platte grow since you were an alumni here, like looking at the high school then to now, like the change?
Well, I don't think it's weird. It's sort of satisfying.
Yeah.
That's really, to make the town grow was really the whole reason I ran for mayor in the first place. Obviously, I have a pretty job that keeps me pretty busy at the hospital, but I wanted to try to lend my expertise and my leadership skill to the city too, because you have to have somebody who's pushing and helping other people push in order to make your town grow.
Right.
And what I always say is there's really 3 simple things you need to make your community grow. You've got to have jobs, you've got to have places for people to live, and you've got to have things for people to do. Obviously, there's lots of other little stuff that figures into those categories, but those are the 3 main things. And if you can push on all 3 of those, then people will move to your town, and they'll grow, and they'll be successful. So we've added, in the last 4 years, something like, we approved just shy of 2,000 new housing units in the community, which is more than had been approved in the 40 years before that. We've added, obviously, sustainable beef, the things that are at District 177, Murphy Tractor, and the list goes on in terms of businesses coming to town. And then things to do, the rec center. You might know we're redoing the tennis and pickleball courts. And in the coming years, we're going to do something about softball and baseball diamonds and a few other things that we haven't quite worked out the details on.
Well, nice.
Expanding on that again. So you said, like, that was a big reason to become the mayor was to see, like, North Platte grow. But like, what was your initial, like, timeline to wanting to run for mayor and city council and stuff like that?
Well, honestly, it's not something I ever thought about doing until about 2 years before I became the mayor. I can tell the story. It's kind of funny. I actually blame my wife. It's really Terry's fault that I'm the mayor. So, she and some of her friends had a coffee one day, and they were talking about how to make North Platte grow and what could be done. And I also happened to work with one of her friends. Her friend's name is Fiona, and she doesn't work at the hospital anymore, but she did then. And I'm at work doing something, and Fiona calls me and says, "Hey, I need to talk to you for a minute. Where are you?" I say, "Well, I'm in Ivan's office." He said, "Oh, I'll be right there." I'm thinking, "Oh goodness, something's broken. You know, we need to fix something. Something's wrong." So she comes in. So Fiona comes in, sits down, looks at me, and says, "You need to run for mayor." I'm like, "What? You've got to be kidding." And she's like, "No." And around this time at Great Plains Health, a lot of us, the executives, the other C-level people, we'd kind of been playing practical jokes on each other just to, have a little fun at work. And so I'm
Right.
thinking, they're setting me up for something here. They're going to embarrass me somehow. Well, after I talked to her for a little while, talked to Fiona and Ivan, who Ivan thought it was a good idea too, and he's currently the CEO of the hospital. And I realized they were serious. And so I said, "Okay, I'll think about it. I've never really thought about being a politician, but I'll give it some serious thought. But I really need to talk to my wife and see what her thoughts are, because when you're married to somebody who's in any level of political office, it's really a team effort. It's not just you. It's you and your spouse or you and your whole family, whatever the case may be, that's doing things." And Fiona looked at me and said, "Oh, Terry was at the meeting. She's in. She thinks you should do it." I did not know my wife was in the political machine of North Platte, but apparently she is. So anyway, it's a good story. So we talked about it for the weekend, and then on Monday I went back and said, "Okay, I'll do it." And so then we started the process, and we worked on it for, I would say, probably about 9 months before I actually announced that I was going to run, and then it was most of a year before I was elected after that.
That's awesome.
Nice.
That's a great story.
How was that process? Was this pretty stressful or?
It had its moments. When you run for office, you have to be able to stand up and say what you think and what you believe in, and you know that no matter how you say it, not everyone's going to agree with you.
Yeah.
And you have to be comfortable with the fact that not everyone's going to agree with you. And I am comfortable with that. I've known that my whole life. And you can't start businesses, you can't run things thinking that everyone's just going to automatically follow along with everything you say. We're human beings, doesn't work that way. And imagine what a boring life it would be if it did, if we all thought the same way.
Yeah.
How boring would it be? I keep a piece of paper on my wall in the mayor's office, and it's got little tick marks. And when the Sustainable Beef Project was coming online, you guys might remember about 4 years ago, it was kind of contentious in our city, and we had some people who were not very happy about it and some people who were really excited about it. And so I started keeping track with the tick marks, just the little split sheet, for, against, and in the middle. So everybody who would actually come up and talk to me or sent me a letter or sent me an email directly to me, I would put a tick mark in whatever the column was. And I had about 20 people come up, either talk to me directly or email me or something like that throughout the process. And if you look at the tick marks, I believe there is 7 for, 7 against, and 6 in the middle. So what that tells you is even with things that are big and important to your community, about half the people are going to like it, about half the people don't care, and the other half don't like it, and then some number of people are kind of neutral to the whole situation. So I try to keep that firmly in my brain at all times, no matter what I'm doing, probably making half the people happy, upsetting half the people, and there's a few people that just don't care.
That's probably a good mindset, honestly.
It is. So what you have to do in that situation is you just have to try and look at all the facts and try and make the very best decision. And what I keep in mind is what's good for people your age. Because I'm only going to be on the earth for another 30, 40 years. You guys are going to inherit. And when you're my age, when you're 50, and hopefully you're looking back at your kids going, hey, I grew up in this town, or I lived here and I moved back, or whatever your situation ends up being. And you want to be proud. You want to, hey, our town did these things. We were in decline. A whole bunch of people in the community got together and decided, nope, we're going to go back the other way. We're going to make it grow. And that's really what happened. It isn't just me. It's a whole bunch of other people in town. I helped a little, but it's mostly a lot of other people in town being willing to put their money, their time, their effort, and their experience to make the community better. And in a sense, you guys are doing that right now because you're sitting here in a communication medium making sure that people your age have a chance to talk to somebody who's out doing things in their town. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for
thanks for coming
on.
out. Yeah,
that's fun.
So you said you wanted to have more opportunity for the youth. It's like, what is your plan to really express that and have the opportunity? What opportunities do you want to have or want to see?
Well, that's an interesting dilemma because a lot of times in fact, almost all the time, when I ask somebody who's around your age or maybe even up to 10 years older, what are you guys, 16, 17, somewhere in that vicinity? Okay, even up into the mid-20s or so. They say, well, North Platte's boring, or North Platte doesn't have a lot to do, or something along those lines, whatever the comment is. And I say, okay, what would you like to have? Well, I'd like there to be more to do. Okay, but specifically, what would you like there to be to do? I mean, well, I wish I had a dance club. Okay, I like to dance too. I do kind of wish we had a dance club. I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. And there really isn't a place to go dance, per se. Okay, so setting that aside, what else? So North Platte would be the perfect place if we had a dance club. Well, no, there wouldn't. I still want more to do. Okay, well, what do you want to do? Well, I'd really like to see a Taco Bell. I personally am not very fond of Taco Bell food, but a lot of people love Taco Bell food. So, okay, that's fine. Well, maybe we can figure out how to get a Taco Bell over time. Okay, what else? And a lot of times they don't say anything. They don't really know. They just want something more.
Yeah.
So what would you guys suggest?
Honestly, well, coming from a person that has played sports their whole life, I feel like it would be nice to see maybe an updated sports complex. That would be cool.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool about District 177 with the whole mall and stuff, like the new stores, because I feel like we haven't had a lot of shopping options in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. Just kind of like build off of that.
So you'd like to see more shopping options?
Yeah, I'm a big shopper.
Yeah, I'd probably have to agree with like the athletic complexes and stuff. Just update like the baseball fields and the cages and
Right.
everything over there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe get like, maybe update like our indoor facility for things, or just.
So have you guys seen the plans for the new rec center?
Very vaguely.
Yes, I've seen. I've watched the YouTube video, and that looks super nice.
So there's going to be a turf area, and we were able to make it bigger than originally planned.
I didn't know that.
So, and it will have batting cages that raise up into the ceiling.
Oh, really?
Oh.
So if you want to go do batting, softball, baseball, whatever, they can lower them down. And you can stand there and do batting cages. That's going to help. And the turf area should be big enough that you couldn't play softball league or baseball league or something in it, but a team can actually go out there and practice.
That's awesome.
That's
yeah.
cool.
And of course, it's astroturf. It's not actual grass,
Yeah.
of course. And the area is large enough that the turf can either have a wooden floor put over the top of it, or they can roll the turf up and put it over the concrete, so it can be converted into basketball courts.
Oh, really?
Or volleyball, or whatever it needs to be converted into to have different tournaments. And it is a huge area.
Isn't there going to
Easy.
be a track too?
Yeah, there'll be a walking/running track. It's going to be up on the second floor.
Oh, really?
And it's not quite a tenth of a mile in length. Excuse me, it's a little more than a tenth of a mile, because nine times around it is a mile, the way it's planned. And you can look down on the gym, and also I think on the turf area. I can't remember how that works, but somewhere in there you can look down on the people that are down there. So there'll be a new an additional gym area, the existing gym area, and then this turf area, which is going to be directly south of where the gym is right now.
That's awesome. So, like, coming back to like your high school experience, were you in any activities or clubs? Or
Well, I
anything?
did the newspaper staff. I was in National Honor Society. That's about all I remember. I didn't play any sports. That was not my thing.
Yeah.
So, it seems like there was something else, but it's not coming to me what it was. That was
Yeah.
all. I'm dating myself here, but that was almost 40 years ago for me, so it's been a while back.
Yeah. How was that though? Like, how was like your activity experience?
Well, there was a lot to do, but I also had a job. I worked for the sports shop when I was in high school, pretty much the entire time I was in high school. So I would, go to school, do any newspaper stuff that needed to be done in the evenings, which usually wasn't a lot, do homework, and then I would go to work. And so my day started at, 7:30, and usually got home around 9. So I kept myself pretty busy that way, so there wasn't a lot of activities. And of course, you want to do things with your friends and things like that.
Right.
And we did. We used to get a lot more snow around here when we were in high school than we do now, and so there was always winter activities.
Yeah.
We'd have big snowball fights, and we'd do all sorts of things. I do remember in school there was always something interesting going on, and some of the teachers that I don't think probably any of the teachers I had are still here. They're probably all retired now, but Mr. Peaks, Gordon Peaks, was a really good guy. He taught electronics and eventually math, I think, and he was just an entertaining guy. He'd had all sorts of jobs, and we used to have a lot of fun with Mr. Peaks. And then Mr. Warnicki is still around.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he's a tennis player, but he taught government and things like that. And then you guys might have heard about Miss Brogy or at some point in your high school careers. She was kind of a notorious teacher in North Platte because she was this lady who was probably all of 5'2". Her hair was another 6 inches taller. She had it sort of up on her head all the time, and she was a very stern teacher. And boy, if you took her classes, you knew something about government when you were done, or you didn't pass. And I was always kind of interested in government, so her classes weren't very hard for me, but. She was an interesting person. And Mr. McGuire, Dan McGuire, his wife, still lives here in North Platte in their house, and he was a government teacher as well. And he and Mr. Warnicki would get together, and Dan was a kind of a Democrat, and Warnicki wasn't, and so they would have these. They wouldn't actually fight, but they would have these debates about the different political perspectives in class. And back then, politics was much more cordial than it is today. So you could have those debates, and people didn't get upset. You just talked about the facts and things like that. And so it was an interesting career in that respect. And I'm sure there's some other teachers that I didn't think to mention, but those guys were very interesting people.
Well, that's our little timeline, but wrapping up, do you have like any advice or words of motivation or anything for anybody?
Well, if I look back on what I might have done differently when I was in high school, and of course, my world was different than yours is now, but I did not spend enough time thinking or figuring out what I might want to do in the future. You know, I had my job, I had my things I did, and that's pretty much what I did. And I knew I was going to go to college, but I'd sort of thought, well, I'll finish high school, then I'll go to college, and then I'll figure that stuff out. And I probably missed out a little bit. So my advice, in answer to your question, is get out there and do some different kind of jobs, do some different kind of activities. Get as much experience as you can underneath your belt and see what you like, because then it's easier to know where you're headed, and you don't find yourself at 21 or 22 thinking, well, I kind of like this, and I don't like that, and I kind of like this. You can just be on with your life and doing something you really love. No matter what you do, it's going to take some time to figure that out, but give yourself the best volume of experience you can when you're young, because your parents will pay for it. That's when you have time to do that sort of thing in your life, and you get closer to adulthood, and it gets more expensive, harder to do, and who knows what responsibilities you might have when you're 24 or 25. So that's my advice.
It's awesome.
Well,
That's
thank
great.
you so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. Well, it's the Bulldog Banter. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.